suited it here. So this is actually a story about a bird, but it starts with a dog, my pet dog, who died on my 8th birthday, if you can imagine that. I will warn you, there's quite a bit of death in the stories I'm going to be telling tonight, so just sit with that. But this dog's name was Laddie, and he was a very stubborn West Highland White Terrier with one of those little bottle brush tails that sticks up. And he would run away all the time down to the beach, and he would kick up sand and dirt with his hind legs, and he always ran around and barked at the ground. I don't know if you've seen the movie Shaun of the Dead, but there's that character at the pub who always says that dogs can't look up, which is ridiculous. But Laddie never looked up. He would bark at the ground no matter what was going on. Here's an example. Once he's out in our backyard running around and around and around the tree, barking like mad at the ground, absolutely frantic. We go out, we're like, Laddie, what's going on? It could have been anything at all. And then we hear this whoosh, whoosh, up right above our heads, and we look up, and the entire sky was filled with bright geometric colors. So it turned out that a hot air balloon had could have gotten away from the exhibition grounds down the lake shore and had come our way along Lake Ontario. And at the top of our street, the wind direction changed. And this hot air balloon was about to go down and over Lake Ontario and was going to run out of fuel. And that would have been devastating. So on their way down our street, they were trying to hit every single tree as they went. And when they got to our tree, Laddie went crazy. So all of us ran down to the beach to try to help them stop before they went over the lake, and they're dropping ropes, and we grab onto ropes, and Laddie's running all around us, barking at the ground, barking at the ground, barking at the ground. So Laddie the dog died on my 8th birthday, which was devastating, but I didn't find out for 2 days. We were on a road trip coming back from North Carolina to Toronto. When we got home a couple days later, my dad called the kennel to pick him up. We got the news that Laddie had died. Turned out it was on the evening of my birthday. Laddie loved the kennel. He would run back and forth all day with all the dogs. So he probably died really happy in his sleep. Took him to the vet who took a look to see why he died. It turned out he was born with a congenital heart defect, which they call an enlarged heart. So it turns out that if you're a dog, sometimes if your heart is too big, one day it'll just stop beating. But I mourned that dog for a good full year. I mean, I was a kid. I felt like I needed a pet, and he was the only pet I'd ever known. So I started looking into different kinds of pets that I could get. I thought about guinea pigs, got a book about guinea pigs. They're a bit skittish though, a little bit nervous, but I loved how they looked. But then I had a chance to take care of a pair of guinea pigs that belonged to a friend. They were going away for a week. We took the guinea pigs home. And within 2 days, one of them had died of a miscarriage. And then the other one died of a broken heart or something, and we had to give these 2 dead guinea pigs back. Then I thought about maybe getting some hamsters. But see, my sister, my older sister, already had 7 hamsters buried in our front yard, and my parents did not want to bury any more hamsters at our house. Now, I'd always been a bird lover, a lover of wild birds, blue jays, cardinals, crows, all that. But I started thinking about getting a pet bird. There was a girl in my class at school who had a pet cockatiel named Spike, which is not a very original name, as you will see. Our teacher, turns out, also had a pet cockatiel, so I started researching cockatiels. I got a book about cockatiels. It had a special chapter called Understanding Your Cockatiel, and I was very excited about these birds. So just a little bit after my 9th birthday, my parents took me to the local pet store. I already had one picked out. We brought home a pet cockatiel, and I named her Spike because, well, first of all, I was a kid. I gave her the most obvious name. And secondly, because we actually thought that she was a he, and Spike seemed like a he kind of name. So Spike made herself a member of our family right away. I should tell you, though, what cockatiels are. They're the smallest kind of parrot. They've got this bright yellow crest on the top of their head. That's why Spike's an obvious name. And it goes up and down with their emotions. So it's like they wear their heart on their sleeve, except their sleeve is on the top of their head. And cockatiels have gigantic emotions: excitement, joy, rage. I mean, this bird could draw blood by biting us if she wanted to. But we saw this as a good thing. You know, we thought, she stands up for herself. This bird has personality. But the amazing thing about cockatiels is even if their emotions get to be too much, there's this kind of built-in thing they can do where they shake their entire body from crest to tail, like and everything is forgotten. They just reset their emotions back to neutral. Now, Spike made herself a member of our family right away, as I mentioned, and the first person she bonded with was my mother. She loved my mom. She would fly over and land on my mom's shoulder at meal times and nibble on mom's earlobe while we ate. This lasted a single week. And then one day my mom got a perm and Spike flew over, took one look at her hair, took a sniff of her hair, shrieked, freaked out, flew all the way around the room, landed on my dad's shoulder, and never looked back. For the rest of her life, Spike at every mealtime would go on my dad's shoulder and clean his mustache while he ate. But it's not like she abandoned my mom. It's like their relationship just changed, became more hands-off. Because cockatiels can have different kinds of bonds with different kinds of people. You know, in my case, our bond was that she was kind of like my other mother. Like she and my mom worked as a kind of a team. If I was upset, you know, Spike would come to the front of her cage and just stare, trying to know what was going on with me. And my mom would go up and kind of talk as though she was Spike, kind of speak through Spike. She'd say, what's going on with that kid with the yellow hair? What's that kid with the yellow hair so upset about? Now, Spike would also help me with my homework. At least she thought she was. She'd stand on the top of her cage and stare down at whatever I was working on. So if my mom came into my room, she'd see I was working because of how Spike was behaving. At 9 p.m., Spike would start to grind her beak, which is kind of like brushing and flossing for birds. And then at 10:08 p.m., whether or not I was ready for bed, she would start to freak out. And she, even when I was a teenager, 10:08 p.m., it's like she'd imprinted on my grade 4 bedtime, and she could never let go. So she'd love to help my mom cook. And she'd give my mom exactly 45 minutes. It was the same kind of thing. At exactly 45 minutes, if my mom was ready or not, Spike would start to shriek to call us up to dinner. My mom would have to kind of like settle her down. So like I said earlier, Spike we thought was a he. She turned out to be a she. And the way we found this out, which is reasonably common with birds and turtles, as my sister found out, is that she started laying eggs. Now these eggs were blanks, of course, but we decided to encourage her. So we built a cardboard nesting box in the top of the cage, and she set to work laying eggs, sitting on them. Birds are the most amazing mothers, but they will obsess and they will possibly starve themselves to death. And what she did, she had not let my mom touch her physically in years, but it was mom that she wanted to stroke her back when she was about to lay an egg and to feed her by hand when she wouldn't leave her eggs for days at a time. But the vet finally said, look, you've got to get rid of this. The eggs, the nesting box, all of it. So we did. And Spike hobbled out of the nesting box to eat a seed from mom's hand, took a big sip of water, took the biggest poop of her life, and then she shook her entire body from head to tail, and all was forgotten. Now, fast forwarding a little bit. When I was 14, Spike got a tumor on her wing. It might have been cancer, but they don't do a biopsy with birds. We found a vet who said that he specialized in birds primarily, and he removed the tumor and a big chunk of her wing with it, and she could never fly again for the rest of her life, which must be terrible for a bird. But she survived, and now she would walk up my dad's arm to get to his shoulder at meal times. She still helped me with homework. She still helped my mom cook. And she was still my other mother, especially when my mom had her first breast cancer diagnosis when I was a teenager. You know, which they caught in time, that time, and mom came through okay. But when I was 19, Spike got a new tumor, and it was bigger. I mean, it was the size of a Canadian loonie with a big blood blister around it. Now, if she were the size of a person, it would have been this big on her arm. So the vet said he's gonna have to amputate the whole wing. We scheduled surgery for Spike. So when birds feel sick, they'll go to the bottom of their cages and hunker down like they're trying not to be noticed. And mom made it her goal to make Spike feel comfortable. She put on Spike's favorite CDs from all the time they spent cooking together, mostly Cirque du Soleil CDs. I love that music. And she stroked the bird's head and back, and she would whisper to her. It was like palliative care. Now, Spike had her operation. It was successful. The vet removed her entire wing and stitched every little blood vessel together. Can you imagine the detail of that work, the expense of that work? What happened, though, is Spike came through the operation just fine. She came out of the anesthetic. She was kicking. She was feisty, which is a good sign, the vet said later. But I guess the shock was just too much with the anesthetic. And then she just sort of stopped. And she died on the operating table. So that night we brought her home in a shoebox, had her at the dinner table, and she just looked so little. She had one wing, no more big emotions, no more big personality, just a little pile of feathers. I had no idea how heavy that feeling of losing someone could be, but it wasn't the last time. Fast forward to now, it's 5.5 years since I lost my mom. When her breast cancer came back, they did not catch it in time. And I feel like with people we've lost, sometimes it's easy for memories of them to kind of become a little bit too light and airy and float up like a hot air balloon. And every time I feel like they're going to float away over the lake and I'm going to lose my memories of my mom, I think of Spike and her relationship with Spike, and that gives me a rope to hang on to. Like how she had such empathy with Spike, how they shared a sense of humor, how they shared mothering of me in a way for those 10 years. And also the kindness that my mom showed to Spike. When Spike hadn't wanted her to touch her for 10 years, she wanted mom to be the one when she was laying eggs and when she was dying. And sometimes I think about something that Spike taught me, which is if your emotions get to be too much, maybe I can't shake from crest to tail, but there are ways to anchor myself and settle myself, at least for a little while. And I keep trying to work on those things all the time. Thank you.